Kirk Cousins. A really sad day as a Vikings fan this past Sunday. And I just remember 6 years ago, after the magical 2017 season in Minnesota with the Minneapolis Miracle, 13-3, championship game appearance, Case Keenum became a fan favorite. Teddy Bridgewater was also on the team at that time, another fan favorite, probably the best quarterback in terms of like the fan appeal since Dante Culpepper, or Brett Favre in 2009. But that offseason, we go ahead and bring in Kirk Cousins, which was a very controversial move, both from the fan standpoint and within the organization. But we were taking our swing at the Super Bowl when we did that. And I remember talking with people, you guys, during that first year saying, man, I like Kirk, but I don't feel the same connection that I felt with Case Keenum or Teddy. And that year had a lot of ups and downs. But the one thing that started to turn me more towards Kirk is how the media viewed him. It was always, he can't win in prime time. He chokes in big games. His numbers are inflated. But Kirk would always, as he's done his entire career, he says the right thing, puts his head down, goes to work, does it with a smile on his face. It's easy to become a fan of that guy. And for Vikings fans, he really did become our guy. We would say how well he would play. No one would give him the credit he deserved, but we had his back. And in his second year, if you guys remember that game going down into New Orleans, you know how much I hate the Saints. When he went and beat them in the wild card round, a 13-3 Drew Brees-led team, that was one of those moments for me. Like the Vikings don't do that. And that was one of the best games Kirk ever played as a Viking. I just remember that sticking out to me. But
wild
here,
card game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, wild. It was awesome. But over the past 2 years now, it's the best football I think we've seen from Kirk Cousins in his entire career. We talk about last year's 13-4 team, 11-0 in one-score games. We've said it. That team would struggle to win 5 games if anyone else were leading the way. That was not a great football team, but they made fantastic plays time after time again and rallied around Kirk Cousins. You could see that with the chains and everything. That team loved him. And this year at 1-4, your season should be over. But Kirk takes his play to another level. MVP performances. He's playing like a top 5 quarterback, I think, over the past couple weeks. And it was the best Kirk Cousins I'd ever seen, regardless of time in Washington, Minnesota. And since the documentary came out, I think that's the first time you started to see a glimpse of people saying, oh, okay, yeah, maybe Kirk Cousins is actually really good. Like maybe there's a side to him that we haven't given credit to. And it just sucks for a guy that takes so many hits. You saw it in the documentary. Time after time, he would get pounded and always come back in. Never missed a game due to injury. To see it happen non-contact Achilles was really just sickening. I feel bad for Kirk. I feel bad for his family, the Vikings players, Vikings fans. But I'll end it with this here. When we were growing up, you had Big Ben as like your franchise quarterback. Our Giants fans, who we grew up in Jersey, had Eli Manning. Some Pats fans we knew had Tom Brady. Vikings fans didn't really have that. Teddy Bridgewater, it looked like, was getting close, but then that fell apart too. So Kirk Cousins really became, at least for me, the quarterback of my youth, or the end of my youth. And, I think Kirk made it. I was proud to be a Vikings fan with Kirk Cousins leading the way. The way he carried himself on and off the field was really incredible. And I hope it's not the last time we saw him in purple this past weekend, but I'll be a fan of his wherever he goes, on or off the field. So I just want to say thank you, Kirk, because you've meant a lot to Vikings fans, and hope to see you back soon.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a shame because, as you touched on, he was playing not only the best football of this somewhat young season, but the best of his career. Minnesota was starting to look like a team I was like, okay, this team can make some noise in the NFC playoffs. He followed up the best game of the season against San Francisco with arguably, as a team, a better game now in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Gets the team to 4-4, almost 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns before going down. And it was terrible to see. It really was. It was an awful thing to see. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Ziggy, real quick, I just wanted to add on to Jack's statement there. We talked about at the start of this season how the Vikings very well could end up being a better team this year with a worse record than last season. And a lot of people found that confusing. But last year's team, 13-4, there were a lot of lucky plays. There's a lot of luck that went into it. It was skill, of course, great last-second wins. But there's a certain degree of luck involved in that. this year, the past 2 weeks are the best the Vikings have played over the past 2 seasons. And that's what makes it so disappointing, is that for the first time now in 2 years, it was like, wait a second, the defense is sort of figuring it out. Addison's getting involved. Justin Jefferson going down has opened the door actually for Addison to become a playmaker in this offense. And it felt like everything was clicking. This was the most confident I was in the Vikings. I said on Sunday, I freaking said 2 hours before it all fell apart when we were mauling Green Bay. I looked at my dad and said, like, it could be on. The Super Bowl could be on.
And look at your upcoming schedule.
Oh, I know.
It's the Falcons, the Saints,
San Francisco
the Broncos,
lost.
the Bears, the Raiders.
In their past 3 games, only one team has given up fewer points than the Vikings, and that's the Giants. Things were finally starting to click, and this is about Justin Jefferson. The offensive line was finally fixed. Kirk Cousins hadn't been on an injury report in literally a decade. Week 1 of 2013 was the last time Kirk Cousins was on an injury report. I don't mean missing games or playing hurt. I mean on a report. So, I don't know. Kirk Cousins was finally shaking off the mediocre labels, the average labels, the can't play in primetime labels from everyone except, I think, literally our executive producer. But here's what you're going to see. You are going to see how much this Vikings team
let me just put it out there one more time. Mr. Average.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now it's personal.
Well, see,
if you think Kirk Cousins was
Zach's
Mr. Average, watch what happens to this team with Kirk Cousins gone and Jaren Hall or Carson Wentz or Case Keenum. Or, you'll find out tomorrow, whoever's replacing him, you are going to find out what an average quarterback does on this team.
Do you guys think, so right now I know Jameis Winston rumors are flying around. What's the best option for the Vikings to go with? Because I don't want to try and make a move for Tannehill. I don't want to bring in a Nick Foles or a Matt Ryan, whoever it may be. It feels to me like you can swing for the fences and try and go after a guy like Kyler, but I don't think I want to give up draft capital given the state of this team. What I would do if I were the Vikings, if you can get Winston or someone like that in a cheap trade, okay, go for it. But overall, I'd probably throw out Jaren Hall and see what he could do for the season. Hope Kirk Cousins can recover for next year, and you draft a quarterback in the first round of the draft or second round, whoever you like this year, and then give that guy another year behind Kirk. It's a little out there because you're hoping a 35-year-old, soon to be 36, by the time we get to next season, Kirk Cousins is healthy enough. But with the way people have been recovering from injuries lately, I feel pretty good about it. The way Kirk Cousins handles himself, we all saw in the documentary just how good a physical condition he is in. So I that's the way I would lean, is roll with Hall, see what happens. But I'd rather take a risk on him than bring in someone like, Tannehill or Foles or Wentz, who we know is probably will not get the job done.
For me, there's 2 options. I would probably stick with Jaren Hall. Drafted him for a reason. It's a difficult situation because you're sitting there at 4-4. You're not in an all-out rebuild, but you don't necessarily want to trade players away either. But like I said before, your upcoming schedule, it's easy. It's the Falcons, the Saints, the Broncos, the Bears, the Raiders. Jaren Hall, coming out of BYU, all the pre-draft stuff,
you like
the combine
a lot.
I like him. So do others. His pros are his above-average arm, good ball placement, pocket patience. Justin Jefferson is coming back soon, and I believe that there's no harm right now in giving Jaren Hall a shot and seeing what he can do. I think he can captain this offense well enough in the near future against the schedule with JJ, with Addison, and with Hawkinson. I lean to sticking with Jaren Hall. Then the other thing I would consider is you have a lot of 5th and 6th round future picks. Maybe you can go get a guy for cheap. Maybe a guy like Case Keenum, who's been with Kevin O'Connell, who's taken Minnesota to the NFC Championship game before. That's what I would do. I'd stick with Jaren Hall or go get Case Keenum from Houston.
What would you do, Ziggy?
I'm not trading for a guy unless I think he's either going to win us the Super Bowl or is the quarterback of the future. Too. So I think that rules out every trade option except Kyler Murray, who at least, I'm not saying he wins the Super Bowl, but he might be the quarterback of the future. That's not going to happen. So that leaves only one option left. Kevin O'Connell calls up his old teammate, a player who he practiced with, a player who he knows intimately.
Cole McCoy.
Tom Brady. They were teammates on the Patriots. He can come in with the Vikings have an offensive line. Imagine how many yards Justin Jefferson puts up with Tom Brady.
I mean, I think
that's the clickbait title for the segment. It's not happening. I think as a Vikings fan, I just sort of have to accept, as much as it's painful, the season's kind of over.
Yes.
Right when we were building momentum. This is the Minnesota thing, right? We don't suck. We give you hope and then take it away.
Oh,
right as the hope was
on
starting
Sunday,
to build.
going into Sunday, I said to my dad and my brother, this is the perfect example of a Viking game where after a huge win against San Francisco, where they looked unbelievable on Monday Night Football, they would go and lay a goose egg against the Packers.
But you mauled them.
And what the Vikings found a way to do was to find the real worst case scenario, which was maul Green Bay and have Kirk tear his motherfucking Achilles.
Yeah, that was the worst.
The drop from
the worst.
If you had told me when Jordan Addison scored to go up 24-3 that it was going to be my worst day ever as a Vikings fan, I wouldn't have believed you.
And
sure enough,
non-contact, I guess these things happen. It was just Kirk Cousins' superpower was his availability his whole career, and
but
stinks.
If Vikings fans, as they should, Ziggy just mentioned, should probably chalk this season up with any expectations at all.
Oh no! Now it's you can't have expectations.
Yeah. So
anymore.
what is the harm in rolling with Jaren Hall and seeing what he's got?
No, that's the thought.
The worst thing in the world is he gets some NFL experience.
Yeah, no. The worst case scenario is it's not even the worst case. If he just stinks and they get rolled, which I don't think will happen anymore, because Brian Flores just turned the defense around. They're playing really good football right now. It literally the entire team is playing awesome. It was just Kirk Cousins was making so many plays for them. I mean, he was perfect the past, really most of this year. He's been almost perfect. That you're asking for a lot from Jaren Hall to step in as a rookie now, but there is a chance still that they could get to a wild card.
I totally agree.
And I just don't think it's worth, I mean, if you could get a guy really cheap, like you were saying, for Keenum or someone, if you really don't believe in Hall, that's okay. You can go and make an attempt. I still don't think that Keenum's good enough to elevate them to a Super Bowl team. So I'd rather roll the dice and see, maybe you hit with this pick. And we'll see what happens. But a really tough blow to the Viking season right when it felt like I was finally enjoying football again, you as well, Ziggy. And it's like, all right, we'll see what happens. But it's been an encouraging 2 weeks for the Vikings in general, just playing better football.